Hello again. Welcome to In This Family, where I have in-depth conversations with fascinating people about mental health, family, the past, and the future. I'm Dr. Michelle K. Murray, President and CEO of Nexus Family Healing, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and your host. In This Family is presented by Nexus Family Healing, a national nonprofit mental health organization who helps youth and families heal from trauma and complex mental health challenges. We believe every child is worth it and every family matters. That means your family, and it means my family. This episode is going to be a little different from what I usually do. I'm interviewing two guests instead of one, and they're not famous writers or entertainers or executives. I have the great pleasure of interviewing my own brother, Aaron, and his 17-year-old son, who is also my nephew, Asher. They've been on a journey of mental health and one of identity as well. For many years, Asher has experienced clinical depression, anxiety, and OCD, which stands for obsessive-compulsive disorder. He's received treatment for that, which has helped, but what's really made a difference has been recognizing and addressing his gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a feeling of psychological distress that someone can experience when their own gender identity and the gender assigned at birth just don't match up. Asher discovered that he was a young trans man. So Asher's been through a lot at a pretty young age: depression, anxiety, OCD, gender dysphoria, realizing he was trans, and then changing his name and pronouns. Through it all, Aaron and Asher's mom have been supportive. They've gotten out of his way when they've needed to and have focused on their love for their son. I've been so impressed by the strength and love this family has shown, and I really want to share their story with you. I spoke to Aaron and Asher from their home in Oregon. Well, hello, Aaron and Asher. It's great to have you on the show.
Hello.
Hello, we're very excited to be here.
Yes, we are.
So, Asher, I want to start with you, and I was wondering if you would be willing to talk to us a little bit about any struggles that you might have or have had with mental health.
Mental health for me as a whole has always has just been kind of like not an issue, but just kind of just like a thing in the background, and sometimes it's more loud than others, if you want to phrase it like that. Ever since really, I don't know, probably early 2020 when everyone kind of went crazy, but as when my mental health really started to like not decline, but like really show up more, like more anxiety and more depression started coming out. And if you're wondering, I have been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and OCD. Those are my three main ones that I've officially been diagnosed with and I'm on medicine for. And it's crazy because everything kind of plays into a role of itself. Like depression plays into anxiety and anxiety plays into OCD or vice versa. And so anxiety, for me personally, it typically makes the OCD worse because OCD is an anxiety disorder, but they recently declassified it for some reason. And sometimes the OCD makes the anxiety worse, and it's weird having anxiety and depression at the same time because anxiety wants you to keep going and it wants you to, hey, get up, keep moving, do this. But depression says, oh, no, don't do that, you're worthless, etc. And so it's weird having all these conflicting thoughts within each other with the mental health aspect of it. But ever since therapy and I've been on meds, it's truly helped a lot, and it's helped a lot in my journey of trying to just manage this mental health and manage the things that I've gone through.
I'm glad to hear that the help that you've received has been making a difference and that you're able to see that. And I thought you described really nicely the way that the anxiety and the depression plays off of each other. So how are you right now with your feelings of depression and anxiety and the OCD?
So much better. It was such a crap show before I got on medicine. It was so just emotionally volatile, if I would put it that way. And now I'm just doing so much better. I think it's mainly because I've gotten the gender affirming care that I have because I'm trans, and I've gotten on that gender affirming care. And ever since I've really gotten on that and medicine, it just has helped so much. And being on meds, again, I will preface that it truly is a life-changing thing. But yes, I say I'm feeling just so much better, depression wise and anxiety wise. Of course, it never goes away. Like, it's always going to be there, but it's not like always there creeping up on me.
Did you have to go through a lot of trial and error with the medications? A lot of people have to do that.
But what I can remember is having to go through trial and error with my my anxiety med and my depression med. My first medicine I got on, it took a while, not a while, but it took like 2 or 3 medicines before I found the right one. And I think that's just a very normal process to go through of finding medicines, because everyone's chemistry is literally different. And I don't think you should panic if you don't find the right med at first. It's just, you'll have weird reactions, yes, but you will eventually find the medicine that works for you.
And Aaron, who is Asher's dad, have you noticed a difference in the therapy and the medications that Asher's had to help the anxiety and depression?
Yes, I have noticed a difference. From my observation, it actually seems like the most impactful change was getting his gender affirming care. Like, even with the medications, there were still times and moments of distress, if that's a good word,
Yeah.
right? That required skills to work through. And it seems like since he started the gender affirming care, that those times have gotten less frequent.
Yes. Yeah.
Does depression and anxiety or OCD run in your family?
Unfortunately, it does. Yes, I've had bouts of depression. I still struggle with depression a little bit. I'm able to manage it without meds, but there's been many times where in my life where I've had to be on meds to be able to get up out of bed and function. And other members of his immediate family have struggled with depression, and then also we have I have siblings that struggle with depression. I have parents and other extended family that all struggle with depression. So yes, there's definitely a family history of depression and anxiety. I don't know about OCD. I don't think I've heard of anybody.
My mom.
Oh, okay. And I don't know if anybody in my extended or immediate family has been diagnosed with OCD, but definitely depression and anxiety. I mean, I think it's kind of basically standard fare now in modern Western society is to have some form of anxiety and depression. Someday somebody will figure out why that is, but in the meantime, we have meds and exercise.
Asher, we're going to talk about your experiences with something called gender dysphoria. Can you give us a definition of that?
It's a hard thing to explain for me personally, because it happens so differently for everyone, but it's basically being uncomfortable in your body or in your gender because it doesn't match your assigned gender at birth. Or I think in general, it just means you're uncomfortable in the gender you are perceived as. I've heard about even cis people having gender dysphoria. It's not just a thing trans people experience. It's most likely going to happen to trans people, yes. But I've heard of cis people actually having gender dysphoria and those feelings and all the stuff. And so it's just very important to realize that it isn't just a trans exclusive thing.
And some listeners may not know what some of these words and terms are. So Asher, can you explain what cis is and then explain what transgender is?
Yeah, of course. Cisgender is basically you identify with the gender or sex you were assigned at birth, right? And so if you were born a female, you identify as female and vice versa and all the stuff. And being transgender typically means you identify as a gender identity that is not assigned to you at birth. So a trans man is a female going to a male, which is what I am. And a trans female is someone going from male to female, typically.
Well, why don't we shift to the gender affirming care then? And maybe before we even talk about the care that you've received to support you, can you talk to us and give us a little bit of the story about your experience with gender dysphoria?
I will say that gender dysphoria is probably one of the hardest things that I've had to work with personally with myself, even more than the OCD or the anxiety or depression. It's hard to really know when the gender dysphoria started coming up. It's more of I started feeling it intensely around late middle school, around that time when I was around 13.
So
14.
this would have been 8th grade?
8th grade, yeah. Around 8th grade.
So that would have been 3 years ago. So you would have been 14.
Yeah.
Just turning 14.
Yeah. Now that the gender dysphoria has come back up and I'm really in it, and not so much anymore, but I look back on my childhood and I look back on me being a kid and realized those weird feelings that were always unexplainable was gender dysphoria when I was a kid. I didn't have it often because I was a kid and I didn't know what gender was or being trans or any of that stuff. But I still had those weird feelings, which I really think a lot of people in our world don't understand about gender dysphoria, is the fact that sometimes, yes, it can happen when you're really young. And it's not like young people are going around like, oh, I have gender dysphoria. Most of the time, we don't understand what this feeling is. All we know is it's weird and we don't know how to explain it until later in life you realize, oh, that was gender dysphoria and that kind of thing. But my experience with it in general has been hard, because it's the best analogy that I heard of that I can explain is that imagine you're wearing two shoes but they're on the wrong feet, and then you're walking around like that and like, why do my feet hurt? Why is this happening? I don't understand. And then someone points out, or you find out, oh, my shoes are on the wrong feet, but you can't really change it back easily, and so you're just kind of stuck with this uncomfortable feeling that you know what it is, but you don't know how to fix.
I think that's a really helpful metaphor. And how did you learn about this phrase, gender dysphoria? And then how did you know that that was fitting for you?
When I was very young, I went through many different... I've basically identified as everything under the tree, honestly. I've non-binary, all that stuff. And the first thing I really ever heard of gender dysphoria is after I figured out what trans was, which I remember the exact moment I figured out what transgender is. I was sitting on my couch and I was just researching. I was just like, I feel so uncomfortable in my body. I need a label, which you absolutely do not always need a label to yourself. I just felt like I needed that. And so I was just researching. And then I clicked on a wiki link and it said trans mask, which basically is a trans man. It's spelled with a C. Basically being under the masculine umbrella. And I read through it and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it's like this moment where it's just like, it just clicks that way. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so then over the next couple of days, I research, why am I feeling like this? And then I go on a lot of trans YouTubers' YouTube pages and I watch their videos, and they explore, especially older trans men, they explore what it's like to be trans and that feeling. And that's when I really discovered what gender dysphoria is. And I realized, oh, the feeling that I'm having is that.
I want to circle back a little bit, Asher, on some of the mental health stuff that you brought up earlier, like the depression, anxiety, OCD. And you described that it was worse before you kind of knew what was really going on. How do you see your mental health challenges interfacing with the gender dysphoria and the transgendered struggles?
I actually just recently talked about this with my therapist. It's just sometimes the OCD pokes at the gender dysphoria, because gender dysphoria, it is mostly its own thing. Most of the time, it doesn't affect it. But sometimes, because anxiety is going to anxiety or depression is going to depression, it pokes at it and it makes it much bigger than it is, or it makes it much angrier than it is. Like OCD, one of my big things is obsessive thoughts. And so having that compared with gender dysphoria, so obsessive gender dysphoria thoughts, it isn't fun when that happens, or anxiety making me anxious about transitioning, or making me anxious about just having my gender dysphoria just be anxious or anxiety isn't fun, and then having depression making my gender dysphoria make me feel horrible and sad all the time also isn't fun. So it pokes and it mixes with it. And so, but most of the time I say that gender dysphoria for me personally is mostly separate. It's just having those extra complications doesn't help.
The gender dysphoria didn't cause the anxiety and the depression and the OCD. Mm-hmm. Those were always there. But the gender dysphoria contributed to their intensity. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And this is from what I observed.
Yes, you're
right. Yeah. And once he was able to understand he had gender dysphoria and got on a track where he could start to transition, it was once he started transitioning that it was like it quieted down the depression and the anxiety and the OCD. It's there. It's always going to be there. But now there's less distress that those things can feed on, right? Because anxiety, depression, and OCD, they can feed on the distress. And so the distress of the gender dysphoria made everything else a little bit more sharp, right? Is what I would say. More acute and more intense when it happened. And now that you're transitioning, there's still stuff that comes up, but it's not as intense.
So as you're reading this stuff and you're discovering this about yourself, what were the feelings that you were having as you were getting more educated?
It was just kind of a feeling of happiness. It was just kind of a feeling of, oh my gosh, like this is what this is. And it's just kind of like putting a puzzle piece into place, or like that final puzzle piece into a puzzle is just that feeling of like euphoria and just being like, yes, that kind of feeling.
So it sounds to me like you found some relief almost. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That you understood what was going on. Mm-hmm. So what did you do once you discovered this about yourself? Did you keep it to yourself? Did you talk to your parents, friends? Tell us that story.
The first person I actually really talked this about was my girlfriend. We weren't partners, or we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend at the time, but we were very good friends. And she still is just an amazing person for me and this journey, as well as my parents. But she was the first person I talked to, and I was like, hey, I think I'm having these feelings of gender dysphoria, and I think I'm trans. And she just opened me with such welcoming arms and such just being like, okay, so is there a different pronoun you want me to use? Is there a different name? And she's just the first person I trusted with that information. But then I really just told my parents once I was comfortable. And of course, that's a hard conversation because most parents don't understand what it means or don't want to understand what it means. Thankfully, my parents have been very accepting, which is very, very lucky. Most people who are trans do not have accepting parents or guardians, which is very sad in my opinion. I think we should accept everybody for who they are, no matter what they identify as. But I told my parents, and I was like, hey, I think I'm trans. And so they took it very well. Of course, it wasn't like before when I identified as different things. It wasn't a sit-down conversation. Besides, I think with my dad it was. I think it was with you. I sat you down and told you I was trans.
Didn't you? I thought you told us together.
No.
Yeah, you brought us into Mom's room and you told us together.
I think, yes. I think to like really finalize it, because I don't think, this is what I'm about to say, I don't think Mom quite understood what I meant because she just got out of a migraine.
Okay.
And so I was on the floor and I was painting a trans flag in my room. And we just had brand new carpets put in. And so I was painting and the paint seeped through the paper and onto the floor.
Uh-oh.
And there was blue paint all over our brand new carpet.
Uh-oh.
And I freaked out. I was sobbing. I went to go get cleaning. I couldn't get the paint out. And then my mom comes in and she's like, what are you doing? And I didn't know how to explain I'm painting a trans flag properly to her. So I'm just like, Mom, I'm trans. And she just looked at me and was like, okay, well, can you clean it up, please? And then just went back to bed. That's why I sat them both down later, because I don't think she understood.
No, yeah, I think I remember you pulling us back into our bedroom and telling us.
Yeah.
I think before that, I remember you showing us a video about somebody having a transgender experience. Mm-hmm. So I think you kind of laid the groundwork ahead of time.
Yeah.
Before you actually told us. Mm-hmm.
Well, that seems
Well, I don't know if that was you. I don't know if that was you preparing us or if that was you actually discovering something with us. So I think
that was just me preparing you.
Okay.
Well, that was a good idea. Did it work? Did it help from a parent's perspective, Aaron?
I would have accepted and loved him no matter what he told us. Yeah. So I don't know if the video helped prepare me or not. I mean, I would have. It was always my goal as a dad to always accept and love my kids for who they are and who they wanted to be.
So it sounds like that was more the important groundwork than the video that Asher was going to show you.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think Asher had to do any convincing or cajoling.
No.
To me.
They knew, my parents knew. It's not like I came out. It's not like I was cis and straight and I immediately came out. I was very much queer. I was very much a queer person before.
And both his mom and I accepted him for who he was.
Yeah.
I think we both, not that we haven't struggled with it, but I think we both love and accept him for who he is.
And talk about that struggle from a parent's perspective, Aaron.
When they're born, you also give birth personally to a lot of expectations. And maybe you try not to have those expectations or they're subconscious, but you kind of have these expectations about what the future's going to look like and who they're going to be. And I tried not to do that because, your kids are just, every kid is just their own unique human being and they're going to make their own choices and they're going to make their own mistakes and they have their own path just like every single one of us. And so I tried not to have expectations, but as soon as he came out, you realize how much you did have expectations that you maybe weren't consciously aware of. And so you kind of have to mourn and grieve what you'd expected and let that go and let them live the life that they choose and that's authentic to them.
What has helped you gain that kind of insight as a parent?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I'm not sure that I know exactly. I think just being exposed to people that are different than me, listening to the way kind of the cultural winds have shifted. I've been involved with groups with lots of different people with lots of different backgrounds and different experiences, and just listening and realizing that my way isn't the only way, that everybody has their own paths. I'm a deeply feeling person, and I have a really innate sense of justice and fairness. And when you look out in the world and you see people being judged unjustly and unfairly for things that they have no control over, it gives you some empathy for those people, and realizing that that kind of stuff is dumb. It's dumb to judge people for things that we don't have any control over. And your sexuality, your skin tone, your gender, that's all stuff we're just born with these, our hair. I mean, it's like judging people for their hair color, right?
Yeah.
We're all born with our hair color. And some people decide, I don't like my hair color, so they dye it and they change their hair color, right? We just have to accept people for who they are.
So Asher, I want to know what advice you would give to other kids that are in the situation that you are in this discovery.
One of the greatest things that I learned from one of my great uncles, he's still alive, and he told me, no matter who they are, no one can stop time. You will not be frozen in this position forever. And I always think about that now with my gender dysphoria, with work, with anything. They cannot stop time. So you will be miserable. Yes, that is a thing. You will not have fun. But gender dysphoria won't freeze time for you. It's going to get better just day by day. The best thing I think you could do is get on hormones. And it might be scary, but talk to your parents. If you can, if it's safe for you to do so. I know a lot of people, their parents aren't even safe to talk to. But get on hormones, and I honestly just, even if you have to do it privately, do weird things that make you feel gender dysphoric. Just like dress up super masculine or super feminine, depending on, what you identify as. Or sometimes, before I got on T and my mustache started growing in, I used mascara on my upper lip on the hair, and it made me look like a mustache, and I loved it. It's not even, I wouldn't even call them stupid things. They're just do stuff that makes you and makes you happy. And when you look in the mirror, you see yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, that is me. And I also recommend getting on online forums for people who are transgender, and journaling and getting just transgender workbooks. I know there are some online, and doing stuff like that. That's really helped me, and I think it just really helps in general.
And I'm assuming that with your hormone therapy and other medications that you are under an advisement of a doctor. You're not doing that on
Yes.
your own, I assume.
Yes, that's what a lot of people mistake, is they think I'm getting these hormones from a backstreet alley and I'm injecting them like into my arm. Like, no. I took like months and months of therapy for me to be able to even get on testosterone, and all this waiting time. And for me to even be approved of getting on testosterone. A lot of people say, if you're trans, you should just go to therapy. And I'm like, guess what? I did go to therapy, and guess what the therapist told me to do? Get on hormones, right? And so, I'm by a therapist and a doctor's supervision. I have to get blood tests done and all this stuff just to make sure that I'm healthy while doing this. But I'd rather do all this than not be on hormones at all.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people may not know the process. So were you required to go to therapy before you could do the hormones?
Yes. I believe so. In the state of Oregon, they require a letter of recommendation from a therapist and from your parents. And so I had to go.
And from your primary, you had to have a referral from your primary care doctor.
So my first thing is I had to get a referral from my primary care. And thankfully, I live in Oregon, so it was no issue. And she sent that referral over, and then they called me up, and then we scheduled an appointment with the gender therapist. And we talked, and over the next about 2 sessions, they wrote a letter of recommendation from the gender therapist because they talked to me. And then they also wrote a letter of recommendation from my parents. They said they're okay with it. And so then it took a couple of more weeks of therapy to be able to finally get that approval to start testosterone.
It sounds like you were really aware, Asher, that your parents were supportive of you and that it was going to be
Yes.
safe for you to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give to parents out there whose kids are struggling with this and the parents aren't supportive?
It's hard because you can't just change a human being's mind. I'm one of those people that it's hard to change my mind. And I know there are some stubborn people who just will not accept their kid. And the only thing I can say is that that's your kid. And the trans suicide rate is high, and it always has been high. And I'm just saying, I think you would rather have, it's grim, but you would rather have your kid here and openly talking to you and on these hormones that might quote unquote damage their body than you having to bury them. Call them by the bare minimum, at least call them by their preferred name and pronouns, right? Even if you don't support who they are or what they're doing, call them by their name and pronouns, right? Because one of my grandmas, she doesn't support trans people, right? And she doesn't understand it and all this stuff, but she said that she still respects me and will use my pronouns in my name, which I think is really cool. And I think just everyone should look after that and be like, even if you don't like it, just at least show humans some decent respect.
And why is that important? Explain to us the importance of people using the right name and the right pronoun.
Because a lot of the time it can cause really bad gender dysphoria, which is the thing we talked about earlier. And a lot of people can make them very, very, very uncomfortable because, it's their wrong name and pronouns. It would be like going up to a man and calling him like she, her when it's a cis man, It's that same exact reason. It's that same exact feeling. And so just like you wouldn't, it's a great example I like using actually, is when people misgender your dog or your cat, they immediately fix it. I don't understand why we can't do that with humans. Why you can't do that with your peers or loved ones, I don't understand the difference, because it's what they prefer to be called, right? The world isn't ending. It's just their preferred name, and it's just the preferred pronouns that they want to use.
You mentioned a grandmother. So how are other family members in your life handling this?
I know on my mom's side, her mom, and besides her dad is pretty transphobic and pretty bigoted. Her bio dad. So in fact, he sent a letter in the mail for my birthday that literally says "Happy Birthday, Granddaughter" on it, and it has my dead name on it and stuff. And so my mom was just like, "I'm just gonna give you the money that's inside. I'm just gonna throw away the card." I'm like, "Thanks, Mom. You're great." But other than that, most of my family members have taken it very well. They might not understand it fully, but a lot of them have taken it very, very well and taken my pronouns and my name very well.
Can you explain to people what a dead name is?
Yeah, a dead name is basically the name you were assigned at birth that you don't go by anymore.
So, Aaron, what kind of advice would you give to parents who just do not understand this and are having a really hard time struggling?
I would say, first of all, trying to understand is good, but you're not required to understand. You're just required to support your kid. And I think the understanding will come later. I think that's true in almost any relationship, that you need to support and love and accept people for who they are, even if you don't understand. We all make choices that other people don't understand. Heck, we make choices that we ourselves don't understand, and it takes a long time to figure it out. And the second thing I would help them understand is, I think a lot of times that people have a hard time because they've set up these expectations about what life is going to be for your kid, and you have to let those go. And that's a grieving process, and it's difficult and it's challenging, but you have to let that go and let your kids be who they're going to be. And I see being a parent more like being a coach than anything, and to help your kids find the things that they're good at and excel at, and encourage that, and encourage them to be authentic and real and healthy human beings.
What has brought you joy as a parent watching Asher through this journey?
What's brought me joy is seeing him be joyful and see him thrive transitioning. That's what's brought me joy. What's been the hardest is seeing him struggle, seeing the challenges and the pain, that not knowing what it was going on. Because for a while he didn't really know. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know why he was in turmoil, why he was in distress. But when he realized what was going on, when he got the label, he was able to make steps to move forward. And ever since he started to make those steps moving forward, the distress has gone down, the depression's gone down from what I can see, and he's starting to thrive, right? And there's nothing more amazing as a parent than to see your child thrive.
What about your fears as a parent, Aaron? Do you have fears at all about what Asher's going through?
I have no fears for Asher himself. I think Asher knows who he is. He's striving to become and reach his potential. I have mostly have fears for the world in which he lives, and the world in which he's going to have to go and provide for himself. We live in a really divisive country. I'm very grateful that we live in a state that is more progressive and that accepts people for who they are and doesn't put in restrictive laws and things like that. Yeah, I mostly fear for him getting into places that that aren't accepting and that might be dangerous for him. So I mostly fear the acute situations, right? The one-off traveling in the wrong place or meeting the wrong person or whatever. But I think overall he's on a really good path.
Asher, what do you think about what your dad said?
I agree with him. It's really scary to live as a trans person right now. As of recording, it's 2025 in the USA. And it's just, it is outright terrifying. It is, I'm not going to lie that it is horrid. It is terrible. Thankfully, I do live in Oregon, and so I don't, besides the news, I don't really hear about it that often. I don't experience it personally, but yeah, it is pretty scary for me to think, oh, I have to watch out for these specific people when I travel to different places other than the Pacific Northwest.
Asher, how has you addressing your gender dysphoria helped your anxiety and depression and OCD?
It's helped because, as well as the OCD and depression poking at gender dysphoria, dysphoria pokes back. And so it's really just, it mixes and swirls all together. And so when you help the gender dysphoria, it kind of pulls back away from mixing with that depression, anxiety, and OCD. So you can really treat it as two different things. And I really think what's helped me most with the OCD and anxiety is I think it's mostly just literally just chemical. I think ever since I got on testosterone, I think I've just been happier because of the chemical inside my body, truly. My mom is the same way. She reacts to chemicals and different kind of meds and stuff, very volatile. I do not react well with estrogen and progesterone. It just, when it gets in my system like a form of birth control, I lose it. And my mom, when she was pregnant with my brother, and I'm assuming when you're pregnant with a boy, you're higher testosterone in your body, she was happier. She wasn't on any meds. And so I predicted I'm going to get on testosterone and I'm going to feel happier, and I was correct. I think it truly is just chemical and that my body just reacts better to testosterone.
So, Aaron, what have you taught your children about mental health?
I think it's just demonstrating to your kids that it's okay to talk about, that it's okay to have struggles, that it's okay to reach out and get help. It's okay to be in therapy. It's okay to be on medications, not judging my kids for their mental health things, not telling them to, suck it up and just deal with it. Because true mental health problems, you can't suck it up and just deal with it. It's not a question of just having a better attitude, right? These are serious biochemical problems in our bodies, right? We don't tell people that have lost limbs, well, just grow your limb back, or just act like you've got a limb, right? We accept that that's who they are, but for some reason as a society, we make an exception for our brains, that because of the brains are our thinking part, we kind of treat mental health we kind of look down on it, needing help, that we should just be able to think ourselves positive or think ourselves better. And that's just not the case. The brain is an organ just like any other. People are born with type 1 diabetes. We don't tell them, well, you should you should work harder on not needing to be insulin dependent. It's like, sorry, that's physically impossible. Because I have type 1 diabetes. That's the way my body is. And it's the same thing with mental illness, mental health struggles, is that's just the way the biochemicals work in our brain. And unfortunately, some of the way the biochemicals work in our brain is one day you'll be fine, and the next day something will happen, and your biochemistry changes, right? You may not have depression for the longest time, and then something triggers it, and now you do, and you have it for the rest of your life. That's just the nature of being human and being in our bodies and the nature of our brains. And so we just have to accept that it doesn't matter that you have a mental health struggle. Let's get the help that can give us the most benefit and literally help keep some people alive.
Well, I really appreciate the time that you guys gave to talk about your story and to share so much vulnerability with people about your experience. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us. It was a pleasure
Yeah, of course.
and a privilege.
Well, it meant a lot to me to talk to my brother Aaron and my nephew Asher, and I really hope that you got a lot out of that interview. Gender dysphoria is a very real experience for many people. Some may not understand that gender dysphoria is actually listed in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. This is the manual that is recognized by mental health professionals to diagnose psychiatric conditions. It's also important to note that the latest revised text version of the DSM recognizes gender dysphoria as an actual mental health condition and not a mental health disorder. Gender dysphoria is actually about the distress, and that's really the important focus. It's about the distress that someone might feel when they have a mismatch between their gender identity and their sex that's assigned at birth. The focus is on the mental and emotional aspects of that distress, of the gender incongruency that one might experience. It is not about one's gender identity, and it's certainly not about being transgendered. And there are actually many transgendered and gender diverse individuals who do not experience gender dysphoria, nor do they have mental health issues or diagnoses. I really think that including gender dysphoria in the DSM helps ensure access to appropriate medical and psychological treatment like counseling, hormone therapy, and gender-affirming procedures. And it was really interesting because while I was talking to Asher about his experience, he expressed his own belief that it's a good thing that gender dysphoria is in the DSM because it gives credit to the experience and it opens the door for people to get the right care to heal from their distress. I also want to say that gender dysphoria among our youth is not an issue that should be ignored or minimized. I know it's a conflicting issue, particularly right now, and it confuses many people. Suicide rates among youth who experience this condition, along with transgendered, non-binary, and LGBTQ+ youth, is much higher than other teens. To provide protection for these youth, research consistently shows that supportive environments, especially affirming families, schools, and communities, significantly reduces suicide risk among gender-diverse youth. Like Aaron said, it is not our job to necessarily understand it or to figure out the why behind it. What's important is to recognize distress in our children and to give them the right support and the love they need while they sort their experiences out. There are some really important links and wonderful resources about gender dysphoria and help for youth and parents related to the LGBTQ+ experience on our podcast landing page. So please check that out. In This Family is produced by John Moe, and the music is provided by Jeremy Messersmith. You can learn more about Nexus by visiting nexusfamilyhealing.org. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you recommend In This Family to your own family and friends, post about us on social, and leave a rating or review. I'm Dr. Michelle K. Murray. See you next time.